Welcome to the Social Bee Podcast with your host, Louise Brogan. Every week, Louise will be bringing you a podcast all about women entrepreneurs, talking about their challenges, their goals, and inspiring you to either start your own business or grow the business you have. Visit www.socialbni.com to join our community and pick up some lovely freebies to start marketing your business online today.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Social Bee Podcast. So today I'm actually going to start by reading out a really lovely review that somebody left me on Apple Podcasts. I was listening to somebody else's podcast and they did this and I thought, I haven't checked my reviews in a little while. I wonder if I've got any new. So I have. I've got 17 ratings of 5 stars, which is amazing. And I have 11 written reviews, so which I appreciate so much. Having reviews on Apple Podcasts actually helps your podcast to get found by more people. So I really, really appreciate it when someone takes the time to do that. And if you haven't and you'd like to, I would obviously really appreciate it if you took the time out to do that. And you never know, I might read out your podcast review on my podcast. So on April the 9th, Keown Farish left a really lovely review. It's funny, inspiring, and bang on point. This is a brilliant podcast for anyone running their own business or even just thinking about getting started in the world of self-employment. Louise's style is very welcoming, practically drawing you into the conversation, and the guests have all been fabulously on point, sharing not just the highs of their success, but also recounting the challenges they faced along the way and how they've overcome them. Although the podcast has a slant towards social media use, obviously because that's what the Social BNI is all about, there are nuggets of brilliantly useful information on other aspects of running your own business to be gained from listening, from how important having a positive mindset is, organisations worth investigating for potential funding and or training. Well worth a listen. Well, Keone, I don't know how to pronounce your name, I'm really sorry. Thank you so much. It's absolutely made my day, that review. So thank you again. And let's get on with today's episode. So today, I'm going to be talking about what is working on Twitter in 2019. I'm not sure how many of you have Twitter accounts. If you have a Twitter account, I'd love you to send a tweet after listening to this and let me know so I can follow you, because I like to connect with all my listeners, and whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, or wherever it is. But if we're talking about Twitter today and you're on Twitter, do tag me in a tweet and we can have a chat on Twitter. That'd be fab. So what is Twitter? Twitter is a brilliant social media platform for those of us who like to talk. And I think you can probably tell that I like to talk. It's like being in a busy room of like-minded people. It's really what I love probably most about Twitter is it's a complete leveler. You can connect with anybody and everyone and anyone. You can follow anybody. It's a very public platform, whereas on Facebook, in your personal account, you accept people as friends. On Instagram, people only see your posts if they're following you. And LinkedIn, you connect with people. What you put out on Twitter, anybody can read, whether they're following you or not. So it's a very public forum, but that actually makes it really quite interesting because you can be involved in conversations with people, other businesses and entrepreneurs without actually even following them. And it's a great way of getting into, it's like going into, people describe it as being like an online cocktail party sometimes, just being in a room where lots of people are talking and you can choose who to talk with and interact with. So how does it actually work? When you sign up for Twitter, you can sign up on your desktop or on your phone. You create your account, you connect it to your mobile phone number, you upload a cover photo and profile picture, and we have previously talked, I think, about using Canva, which is canva.com, which will have proper templates for your different social media profiles, including your Twitter cover photo and profile, so you've got the right size. Make sure you fill in your bio and link to your website. And then you start by finding interesting accounts to follow. So Twitter will suggest people for you to follow to get you started, and then you can find your own. Some people use Twitter for purely following football results, or maybe getting involved in heated discussions about politics. One of my favourite times for Twitter, actually, hilariously, is the Eurovision Song Contest. Following people and following what's happening in Eurovision, and the conversations on Twitter, I think, are some of the wittiest that you'll find online. Quite often during the Eurovision, I will copy tweets and share them across to Facebook, because a lot of my friends and family don't use Twitter at all. It's totally business connections that I have on Twitter. But some of the gems that people tweet out are just so funny that you have to share them. That's besides the point. We're not really talking about Eurovision. Eurovision could be a different podcast. So when you first set up your account, they recommend accounts for you to follow just to get you started. And then you can find your own. So look for other businesses in your industry, maybe speakers that you like or podcasters that you listen to. If you click on somebody else's Twitter profile, you can see the people they follow who might be of interest to you. You might want to follow all your local councillors. You might want to follow your local business associations. Your Twitter feed is totally made up of the tweets from the people you follow. There will be some sponsored tweets in there. I don't bother. It's interesting because Twitter is one of those platforms I would never engage at all in paid advertising on Twitter. And I do see promoted tweets, and I'd be quite curious to see how they perform for businesses. It's mainly massive brands that you would see using sponsored tweets as opposed to a smaller company. But if you're following somebody, say, at Joe Blogs, and all they do is retweet other people's tweets, those will all show up in your feed as well. So when you look at Twitter, you've got the Twitter feed, which is literally all the tweets of the people that you're following. But if you're following Joe and all Joe does is retweet other people's stuff, those will also appear in your feed as well. So what is a tweet, a retweet, a hashtag, all these? What are all these things? So your tweet is what you post on Twitter. It's your update on Twitter. It used to be limited to 140 characters, but it was doubled a couple of years ago. So apparently the most common length of a tweet back when it only allowed 140 characters was 34 characters. So that is quite interesting. Now that the limit is 280 characters, apparently the most common length of a tweet is 33 characters. So that just made me laugh. That's kind of a totally irrelevant point for teaching you about Twitter. So a retweet then is when you retweet somebody else's tweet. When I'm hosting workshops on talking about Twitter, it does get very confusing. But retweet, tweeters and tweeters. It's a lot of the common language is a bit confusing. But so you can, if you see someone's tweet and you think it's interesting for your audience, you can retweet it out to your followers. They may retweet you out to their followers. You can also comment on the retweet, which is actually what I would recommend. So if I'm going to retweet somebody else's tweet, I will retweet with a comment. So when you click the retweet button, which is kind of like a little set of arrows going around in a circle, when you click on that, the option is retweet or retweet and comment. So I would comment with it as well. So you're putting more of your own spin on whatever the tweet is. Accounts that just retweet everybody else all the time, I really don't think they're worth following. It's much better to follow, maybe if the content of that retweet is interesting, go and click on the original tweeter and see what their account is about. So a hashtag then is the way of connecting your conversations on Twitter. Unlike Instagram, where you use up to 30 hashtags on every post, you probably want to limit the number of hashtags on your tweet to about 3. Remember that you're using up some of your 280 characters in there. If you are having a back and forth chat with someone on Twitter, you don't need to really include any of those hashtags in your tweet. But if I tweeted out something like a new episode on the podcast today, all about how to use Twitter in 2019, then at the end of that, I might write hashtag podcast. Hashtag Podern Family is another one that podcasters use, and the people that run Podern Family are totally set up for sharing podcasts and supporting podcasts on Twitter. So when you use their hashtag Podern Family, they will retweet your tweet out to their audience too. Okay, So direct messaging then, DM, so you can DM me, will be something you will see. So this is where you have private conversations on Twitter through messaging. And it can be between you and multiple people, or it may be just between you and one other person. You normally have to be following each other's accounts to allow direct messaging, but some journalists who use Twitter will tweet looking for a source for a story and say, my DMs are open, so that they don't have to follow you back in order for you to message them. Twitter is a fantastic place to connect with journalists. Journalists are looking for content and sources for their stories all the time on Twitter. And how you find those journalists, if you type in hashtag journo request into the search bar on Twitter, you'll see a lot of journalists looking for particular story angles. You'll also see a lot of bloggers using it as well, and people who want to be seen as an expert in something, which kind of clutters up the journal request response. But you can scroll through and you can find journalists who are writing for national media, national magazines, and big websites like Forbes and Entrepreneur. So it's definitely worth checking out now and again. I would like you to use images on Twitter. So pictures work really well with Twitter. If you imagine a really fast flowing stream of tweets, those that have images on them will stand out more. Tweeters are also very fond of using GIFs. I mean, I personally find there's time and place for GIFs, but you do find them quite a lot on Twitter. With images, you have the ability to tag up to 10 other accounts on your image. So that could be if you're tagging people in your photograph, or maybe you're tagging someone that you're talking about. There's lots of different reasons why you tag somebody. I don't recommend tagging someone who is not really connected to your tweet, or because you want to get noticed by them if they're like a celebrity or an influencer. There's other ways of going about that, which we must have an episode in the podcast about that, how to connect with influencers and people that you want to get in front of in your field or in other fields. That will be something I'll talk about in the future. But I don't use Twitter every day. I do check it, but I don't necessarily tweet on it every day. But when I do go to Twitter and start engaging with people, you're much more likely to stay there a little bit longer, I think, because it is very conversational. A really brilliant way to use Twitter is when you participate in what's called a Twitter hour or a Twitter chat. So this is a regularly scheduled chat on Twitter. So it's always at the same time every week. So for example, in Northern Ireland, we have a Twitter chat called Belfast Hour every Thursday night at 9 p.m. There is also Ethical Hours, another example, by Shan Conway, who was interviewed in episode 38 of the Social Bee podcast. It's a Twitter chat for businesses and people who want to buy and trade ethically and connect with others who want to do the same. So I think it is at 8 o'clock on a Monday night in UK time. It was the last time I checked. So there will be Twitter chats that are for people in your industry, and it's really just a matter of finding out when they are hosted. So Twitter hours are usually hosted by one person or business. They will always have a hashtag to use. So it will be hashtag Belfast Hour or hashtag Ethical Hour. And they always welcome new participants. So if you imagine going to an hour-long networking meeting, except it's online, and the words are flying, everyone's using the same hashtag, which is how you connect with other people participating in the hour. And the host is retweeting and replying to as many tweets as possible. It can be completely hectic at first, but my tip would be to just tweet out a tweet to introduce yourself to get started. And usually the host will pick you up and reply to you and kind of bring you into the Twitter chat. You could go and lurk in one for a week to see what it's like. But I think with a lot of these things, it's like learning to swim. Sometimes you just got to get in the water. Well, obviously learning to swim, you have to get in the water. Do be careful with trolls on Twitter. Twitter does get a negative vibe for trolling, and you would have seen people famous people closing down Twitter accounts because they've got a barrage of abuse from people. If someone starts to give you a hard time on Twitter, you can block them. So you can block them, mute them, report them to Twitter. Don't put up with people being negative to you online. You don't have to you shouldn't have to deal with that. the platforms will report